Hey, how you doing today? Great. Welcome back again to another episode of Tune Talk, where we go over some of my favorite artists and least favorite sometimes. Not in this scenario though, because today we're talking about The Strokes, legendary. I say legendary like every video, but hey, all the bands I've covered so far are legendary. Legendary 2000s indie rock group The Strokes made some of my favorite indie albums of all time. They have a not super big discography, but the quality of the discography that they have is so consistent and so great that I think that despite them having less albums, their work shows in just their six studio albums and then their EP, which I also have included here. And I figured it'd be fun to talk about it today because they are in probably my top 10 or top 20 bands, I would say. Personally, I've loved them for quite a few years ever since around my freshman year of high school, I'd say, is when I first got into the band. And let's go ahead and kick things off with their first album from 2001. Is This It? This is I don't know if this is the original or the alternative cover, but there's another cover just like this that's used more commonly just because this one's kind of lewd in its imagery. But hey, this is a phenomenal debut for a phenomenal band. It is one of my favorite debuts ever, I would say. I think that everything great about the Strokes is shown in this one album. There's their sound, their structure, their style. Everything is just shown off perfectly in this album. And it's only 11 songs long. It's only 35 minutes. It's pretty short, but in that short amount of time, you get to know the band like you've known them for years. And it's really a phenomenal listen front to back. A lot of people say that some of the songs sound a little similar, and I can see where they're coming from, maybe from a first time listen. But after you really dissected this album and learned every track for everything it has, no, that's not it at all. This is such a dynamic album. Julian Casablancas, the main singer, has a phenomenal voice on the album. The lyrics are so like thought provoking. They're very, the guitar work is amazing. The drums are awesome. At some point, you think it's like a drum machine, but it's not. That's the actual drumming. The bass work is great. Just the production is phenomenal. I really do not have any complaints, honestly. I think that this is their best album. Which I wouldn't even say that the rest of their work is by any means bad, but I think that they hit it off of like they knocked it out of the park with their first album. I definitely think it deserves the recognition it gets. It also popped up on Apple Music's top 100 albums. Personally, I would say that too. It's in the top 20 for me personally, but I would say from a critical perspective, it'd probably be around the top 40s or 50s. But yeah, it is absolutely a 10 out of 10 in my opinion. It is one of my favorite records. I listen to it constantly, almost daily, in the car or at the gym or whatnot. I listen to it all the time. Going track by track, you have Is This It, the title track, which is a great way to start. You've got The Modern Age, which is still to this day one of my favorite Strokes songs. I love the drums on that. They sound so, they're hard to explain. They just sound so groovin', I guess is a good way to put it. Soma is a slower track that I still love. You've got Barely Legal, which is great. Someday, which I love the hook on it, and I love the riff, the bum 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 bum. I love the riff so much on that. You've got Last Night, which has great vocals from Julian. You've got Hard to Explain, which has one of my favorite openings to a Strokes song ever. You've got Take It or Leave It, which is the closer, which originally wasn't the closer. Originally, it was called New York City Cops, which is another phenomenal track. But the song came out with the album originally, and the album came around September 11th, 2001, which, of course, everyone knows what happens then. And any song or anything that was in relation to New York or terrorism or just violence, anything like that that came out around that time, of course, needed to be replaced or removed. So they replaced it with Take It or Leave It. Both tracks are phenomenal, so I mean, it's really a win-win either way you go. But yeah, um, There's no duds in the entire track list. All of them are great. All of them stand out. All of them are phenomenal. And for all of these reasons, I would say that Is This It is a 10 out of 10 for me personally. And of course, I'm no professional music critic, but I do love a ton of music. And I mean, hey, just for me, it's a great album and it is worth a listen if you have not heard it already. And then moving on 2 years later, we have Room on Fire from 2003. This, I mean, I'm going to be completely honest. Like, this is basically as good, maybe not quite as good, but this is basically up there in quality with Is This It? This album is excellent. Excellent, excellent, excellent. I love it. Again, front to back, every track is so catchy. Every track has great production. Every track has great lyrics, great singing. Everything about each of these is fantastic. The opener, Whatever Happened, is awesome. You have Reptilia, which is one of the band's best songs of all time, probably a top five track of theirs. You have Automatic Stop and 1251, which are super catchy. You Talk Way Too Much, Meet Me in the Bathroom. Let's see, The End Has No End, and I Can't Win, which is the closer. All great tracks, all are phenomenal. I really, again, don't have any complaints with this album. There's so much to love. The Strokes really do have so much personality in their music, and for their time, they took the indie sound and they made it their own. And that's one reason why they're so famous is just because they took something, they took a style and they put their own little twist on it, and their music is just so unique compared to a lot of other bands. A lot of people always say, some people say that a lot of their songs are repetitive, like I said earlier. I 100% disagree. I think that if you're listening to the album kind of in like the background and you're not paying attention, which works for some bands and some people's music, like there's a couple Aphex Twin records, I think that they work best as background music, but not for this. This is the type of music where you need to be paying full attention, listening to it, jamming to it. So if you're doing that, I can't see how you could possibly think that their music is repetitive. They have similar chord progressions and stuff on certain tracks for sure, but I mean that's every group. I mean, tons of groups they use similar chord progression stuff on their songs and similar riffs and stuff like that, but they mix it up just enough to where it works. And I this is also an S tier in my personal opinion. I think it's great. I really, again, don't have any complaints. It's not a 10 out of 10 just because there's two songs on here that aren't my personal favorites, but they don't hold their album back. It's just like they're just two good songs with a mixture of fantastic songs. Those being Between Love and Hate and Under Control. I think that those are just kind of okay. But hey, regardless, this is still a phenomenal album. And it is worth just as much praise as their debut is for sure. Next up, we have First Impressions of Earth from 2006. Came out, excuse me, came out 3 years later. And the band were trying to adapt with the times with their third release. They changed up the production style. They changed up quite a bit of their sound to try to modernize it and to fit in better with audiences. Um, and it shows on this album because this is a pretty significant drop in quality from the first two, which I know is probably the consensus between Strokes fans. A lot of people consider this to be their worst album, if not their second worst. And I could agree that it is their worst, I would say. Still not a bad album by any means. There's plenty of good stuff here to not make it a bad album, but it's just the big thing holding this album back is the production. Everything sounds too loud. Julian's vocals and his screaming just sound terrible at certain points. They just sound so like just annoying, if I could say, and irritating. Not with all of it, of course, but there's just points where it doesn't work. Another personal complaint for me, I think the album is too long. I believe that this is either their longest or their second longest album, being 52 minutes with 14 tracks. I think that there was quite a bit of filler they could have cut out. I wish that it was 11 songs, just like the other two albums so far. I think they could have cut some of the fat there, trimmed it down a little bit of the runtime. I would like it a little bit more. And I know it's kind of weird. Oh, and you want them to not have more songs on it? And I mean, yeah, because sometimes too much of something can ruin it. And I think that's a prime example with this album. But hey, we're going to go over the positives. You have You Only Live Once, which is a freaking amazing opener. I love that. I love the drums. The singing from Julian sounds great. The production actually works for that. I think it is a great way to start. And then you also have Juicebox, the second track, which sounds kind of like a track from like a spy thriller or something. It has a really great bass line on it. And I think it's like one of their only songs, if I'm correct, to chart. I think it only got to like number 98 on the top 100 way back when. The Strokes aren't a super famous band, which is why I like them. I like that they're more underground. They're still well known, of course, but not as well known as quite a few other bands. But yeah, I think Juicebox was a good choice to end up on the Billboard charts. It is a very good track. You've got Razor Blade, which is really good. You've got Vision of Division, which is like 3 mini songs kind of stitched into one, similar to Bohemian Rhapsody and Paranoid Android from Queen and Radiohead, which I like it. I like all the sections individually. I just don't think they work as good together. But hey, it's still pretty decent. Electricityscape is awesome. You've got Red Light, the closer, which is good. But then you've got just some of the worst Strokes songs on here. 15 Minutes, not a fan of that one at all. Killing Lies, not a fan of at all. Heart in a Cage is okay. Evening Sun is okay. But yeah, I mean, there are some good tracks on here. I'd say about half the album is great, but then the other half is just kind of whatever or kind of bad by their standards, I would say. And I think that just kind of makes the album a mixed bag overall. A lot of people give this album usually like a D tier or even like an F tier, which I don't think that's true at all. I just think it's kind of like a C. I think it's a decent album, but by the standards of the Strokes, especially up to this point already in their career, it's definitely a letdown for sure. And they just, I don't know, trim some of the fat, cut the runtime, make it a little shorter, take some tracks out. With some better production, this could have been a lot better. It could have been probably about high B tier, but oh well. I mean, it is what it is. It's still a good album, but it's just not as good as the other ones so far. And then moving on, the band took a pretty decent hiatus from First Impressions of Earth into their next album, Angles, which we're about to talk about. I believe it was a 5-year gap. Yeah, I think Angles came out 2011. First Impressions was 2006. So they took a little bit of a break, just kind of doing their own thing, starting side bands and stuff. And then they finally got back together to make their fourth album here, Angles, which I'm a fan of this album. I do like it a decent bit. There are some phenomenal songs on here. And it is a step up from First Impressions of Earth, that's to be sure. But it's still not at the quality level of their first two albums, in my personal opinion. I don't know. Just there's something about it that just doesn't make me like it as much. A lot of the tracks aren't as strong here as they are on their first two records, which with, of course, some exceptions that we'll get into. It is the shortest album of theirs, I think. It's 34 minutes. I'm pretty sure it's their shortest, or it's their second shortest. So not which isn't necessarily a bad thing. And I do think that there isn't really any tracks here I would cut. In fact, I wish they would have added a track to give it 11 songs, but hey. Again, it is what it is. That's what they decided. The opener, Machu Picchu, is awesome. I love the kind of not reggae, but like groovy style on that track. You've got Undercover of Darkness, which is great. Taken for a Fool and Games. Games is one of my most underrated Strokes songs. I love that track a lot. Call Me Back is great. Metabolism is good. Life is Simple in the Moonlight is pretty decent. It's a pretty decent closer. Not one of my favorite closers of theirs, but still pretty good. And yeah, I mean, this is probably their one I have the least to say about because it's just not one where I revisit a whole ton, but it's not bad by any means, and it is a step up, like I said, from First Impressions of Earth. The cover is also pretty cool. I think the name is kind of lame, especially because the names for their last few albums have all been really cool. I think Angles is kind of boring, but the cover is nice. Has done a good songs. It's definitely a decent return to form from First Impressions of Earth. I would give it a B tier to be sure. I would definitely say. But yeah, it's probably the one I have the least to say about. But yeah, whatever. Next up, we have Come Down Machine from 2013. The band did basically nothing to promote this album. They kind of just threw it out there after one single and I think one music video, and that's really all they did to promote it. So this one really flew under the radar. And I have seen tons and tons and tons of lists ranking the Strokes discography or their songs. And people put this at like a freaking E tier or an F tier? Are you are you stupid? Have you listened to the damn thing? Yeah, no, yeah, I mean it's different, but that's what makes it so good. A lot of these songs are so different for them. And just the production is just so monotone and so like low light. But that's what makes it awesome. The cover is pretty lame. It's meant to represent I believe it's a tape machine or something like that. So the cover isn't the greatest. I would probably say it's their weakest. But the cover aside, you can't deny the quality of this track list, man. I really think that this is their best album since Room on Fire. There are low points, which we're going to get into, but let's see. You've got Tap Out, which has one of my favorite Strokes guitar riffs. I love the. I love that. It's so catchy. I love the chorus all the time. Great. One way trigger is good. You've got 80s Come Down Machine, which I believe was the single and it is the title track technically, which is awesome. You've got Partners in Crime, Chances, Happy Ending, and then track 11 you've got Call It Fate, Call It Karma, which is probably my favorite. No, not my favorite Strokes closer. Probably my second favorite Strokes closer. I just love how different it is from basically their entire discography. Kind of similar to Like Clockwork on the album Like Clockwork from Queens of the Stone Age, how different that track is from the rest of their catalog. And I just like how unique it is. It's just so bizarre. And it's such an interesting way to end the album. Low points, we have Welcome to Japan, which is okay. 50/50, which is probably the most similar to their original sound on here, to their original work. And which is surprising because I'm actually not a big fan of that song. I think it's just kind of bleh. You've got Slow Animals, which is okay. But besides for those three, we have a great roster of songs here for a great album, their most underrated album, in my opinion. I don't understand why it gets so much hate. I really don't. I would put this at an A tier. I think it's really good. I seriously do not see why it's seen as their worst. I really don't. I don't. Maybe I'll have to do some research. But to me personally, I mean, I love this album. I listen to a ton of these songs all the time. A ton of them are on my favorites playlist. And hopefully, maybe after, I'm going to encourage you all, if you're watching, to give it a re listen. If you know anything about the band, I hope you know something about the band if you're watching this. Give it another listen and just really take the time to listen to every single piece of every single track. I really think if you do that, you will like the album a lot more than you remember. As a little tidbit here, we have their Future Present Past EP, which I think is a B tier. It's only 3 songs, which represent the band's future, present, and past. It's a pretty cool concept, and I do like all of the songs. I especially like the future track. I don't remember any of the track names right now, but I do like all of them, and none of them are phenomenal. But hey, it's just a cute little EP. I just figured I'd throw it on here just to spice up the list a little bit more, give an extra thing on there. So yeah, I'm gonna put it at a B tier. And then finally, we have their most recent album from 2020, The New Abnormal, which, what a name for an album that came out in 2020. I mean, that basically fits perfectly. I mean, we all know what was happening at that time. It was the whole, COVID virus and all that stuff happening, and everyone was stuck inside. What is a better name for an album during that time than The New Abnormal? That's like, just, hey, that's going to age like fine wine, that title. Also, this has my favorite Strokes album cover art. I love the cover for this. It just looks like a bunch of graffiti. It looks really, really cool, and I love that they went with that because it also fits the sound of the album really well, how abstract and stuff it is. This has only 9 songs. However, it's about 45 minutes long. Each of these tracks is pretty lengthy, but they are all worth their length immensely. And kind of a spoiler there, but all these songs are freaking great, and this album is freaking great. I think everyone kind of agrees with that. Everyone that's a Strokes fan kind of knows that. They all agree that this is their like big return to form since Room on Fire. A lot of people rank this as either their second or third best, and for good reason. The Adults Are Talking has that awesome drum machine at the beginning with the iconic guitar riff coming right after that. I don't know why, but I really enjoy the way Julian sings the "Say It After Me." The way he sings that part, the chorus is catchy as hell. It's really just a good track. It's a great way to start the album. And I do, one thing I really like about this is how long these tracks are, but they're not long for just no reason. They actually pay off with their length. And that's one thing I do really like, and that's one reason why I'm not complaining that it's only 9 tracks, is because even with it only being 9 songs, it's still longer than most of their albums, which I do really enjoy. You got the second track, Selfless, which is great. You've got Brooklyn Bridge to Chorus, which has like that, I don't know if it's the synthesizer or the organ that opens up. Really, really interesting. Bad Decisions is great. Eternal Summer, no, track number 5, The Middle Point, I believe is one of their longest songs. It's almost 6.5 minutes long. Phenomenal. The lead single, At the Door, which, I mean, my God, what an interesting choice to choose that as the lead single for your album. That's just such a bizarre pick. But I think it works out in the end because that track is fantastic, and I think that it promoted the album greatly. And it's probably my second favorite on the whole thing. Why Are Sundays So Depressing? Beautiful song. Not the Same Anymore is great. And then you've got the closer, Ode to the Mets, which is probably my second favorite Strokes closer. I'd say here's the order. You've got Ode to the Mets at number 3, Call It Fate, Call It Karma at number 2, and then you've got Take It or Leave It at number 1. I would say that's my list. But yeah, this album is phenomenal front to back. I think with maybe an extra track or so, this could maybe be bumped up to a 10, but it is definitely a 9 out of 10, or I don't know, maybe like an 8. I'm gonna put it at a high 8 tier. It's on the verge of S tier. It's right up there. I just think that there's a couple things holding it back. Mainly just I wish there was another track. There's some strange production choices at points. Some points do drag a little tiny bit. But besides for that, this album is well worth a listen. I think every Strokes fan has already listened to it. I'd be very surprised if you haven't. But even if you're not a fan of the band, I think you should still check all these albums out besides for First Impressions of Earth. I think that one's just kind of a little bonus if you just want some more of the Strokes. But yeah, that is going to conclude my list for the band here. Their discography is excellent. I think that shows here. No signs of a D tier. Their worst is just decent, in my personal opinion. And that is the sign of quality for a band like this. They have an amazing sound. amazing vocalist. Every person involved in the band is excellent at what they do. And my only real complaint with the band is I wish they had more albums. I wish they did, because it's been about 4 years now since the new Abnormal, and I just really, really want them to come back again. I really do. And hopefully they will soon. And hopefully they'll drop us another record coming up shortly, and we'll have even more music to love. And yeah, that's going to wrap it up for this video. Thank you to everyone who stayed tuned till the end. I've got some more tier lists coming up shortly, and I just want to say thank you so much. Leave a comment if you'd like. I love responding to comments from people, and have a wonderful rest of your day. See ya.